It's time for our crappy culture. So 16 years ago, today, there was one of the most terrible moments of my life, certainly, when 3,000 people on American soil were murdered in the name of Islam, in the name of Allah. That is, I hate when they refer to these things as a tragedy. It was not a tragedy, it was an atrocity. A tragedy is when a young person dies of an illness. An atrocity is when somebody kills, murders, slaughters innocent people for no other reason than his bad idea. And the Islam as practiced by the people who flew those planes is one of the worst ideas anyone has ever had. Nothing, you can never say good things come out of tragedy, because they don't come out of, good things don't happen to the people who die. So there's no getting those unique souls back on earth to make good. I mean, any good that comes out of tragedy will have to be done in eternity, where those souls we trust can still be found. But even horror can provide for us a moment of clarity. And one of the things, as someone who remembers that day all too well, one of the things that happened in that moment was all the lies that infect and infest our culture were for a moment swept away. And the thing about it is, those lies have developed in a country that has become so rich, so powerful, so abundant, that we have lost touch with what Rudyard Kipling called the gods of the copybook headings, the rules of life that are necessary for survival. We can talk about laying down our arms because our arms are so powerful that no one can kill us. We can talk about giving people a guaranteed income whether they work or not, because we have so much money, we have forgotten that if you don't work, you starve. If you don't make stuff and create things, you lose your purpose. We can talk about men being useless and men being toxic and masculinity being toxic because our men and our weapons are so powerful that we don't need men. It doesn't seem that we need men. And when men leave a culture, as to a large degree they have left impoverished black culture and some impoverished white culture, when they lose their roles as men, we see the disaster that happens, but we're protected from that disaster because we're so rich. In the moment of that atrocity, all that wealth and all that abundance and all that safety disappeared. And for a few moments, there was no talk of toxic masculinity, because we saw men, police men and fire men, running into these burning buildings to rescue whoever they could, and dying as often as not, dying as those buildings came tumbling down. There was no talk of multiculturalism suddenly. There was no talk of relative morality, when it became quite obvious that there was nothing relative about morality. This was the face of evil. It was the face of evil, and we shouldn't have to see the face of evil to know it's there, but sometimes we have to be reminded, and it is always, always a terrible reminder, and at a terrible price. But suddenly the nonsense, the blithering, stupid nonsense of relativism, which you can go into any university in this country and hear preached, was blown away by the presence of evil. Suddenly, there was no talk of American racism, of how racist America is. Sometimes, racism is everywhere. People are naturally racist. People are naturally primal. But I just can't stand it when you put the word American in front of something as if it makes it more important. It's American racism. Racism in America today. The people who died in that building were every color, every religion. They came from different countries. And when I traveled around the country, as I was doing then in that time, and would go into airports and see the, couples who were of different colors, the families of different colors, the different religions, that's why they attacked us. They attacked us because we're not racist. Look at, the streets of Beijing, everybody's the same color. Look at the streets, streets in Nairobi, everybody's the same color. It's only in America and maybe London, only in New York and LA and London where you see the West's acceptance of this multiculturalism, our faith that our ideas overcome everything else. And suddenly all those things were washed away. And for a moment we had clarity, and for a moment we had truth. And it was somebody said it was the end of the age of irony, because suddenly we realized that not everything is a joke, Our principles matter. Our principles are what make us what we are. almost immediately, as the left recovered its stride, they went on the attack to bring back this cloud of dishonesty, this cloud of lies, which they sometimes and we sometimes call political correctness, this idea that there is virtue in lying. I remember, I don't know what it was, a week after 9/11, David Letterman took some time off because he said he really had to get his head around this, and he came back and he said, I need to find out why they hate us. And I thought, why they hate it? I don't care why they hate us. They can kiss my ass and call me sweetheart. You know, it doesn't matter why they hate us. They're evil. They should hate us. They should hate us because they're evil. That is what we want them. We want the evil to hate us. We want them to hate us, and we want them to fear us. And over the years, it's been 16 years now, there's a generation that doesn't even remember 9/11, sad to say. And over the years, these lies have come back. And I listen sometimes to the things that people say. That just don't make any sense. And they say, you know, I've made this joke before, but it's worth repeating, you know, that they say there's no difference between men and women. And then they say, oh, and this person is a woman in a man's body. And I think, well, how does he know? If there's no difference between men and women, how does he know he's a woman in a man's body? Because there's no difference. I mean, it would just be the same thing. They talk about, they'll tell us that there's that we have no soul, but he's a woman in a man's body. And you think, well, what part of him is a woman then if he has no soul and it's just his body? Why isn't his body dispositive? They'll tell us that there are problems in the black community and the problems are all racism. But the important point is they defend these lies. And this is why I go after the media so often. They defend these lies by telling you there are only these lies and hatefulness. There's only the virtue of telling these lies and hatefulness. There's no two sides of any story. And the funny thing is, a lot of times I would have sympathy with some of the ideas on the left if they wouldn't tell me that everything else is hateful. You know, there's a lot of good stuff that's going on behind the scenes, kind of. The New York Times actually noticed it today. It's going on behind the scenes in the Trump administration. Betsy DeVos, got rid of that Dear Colleague letter with which the Obama administration was pressuring colleges to basically hold kangaroo courts and put men on trial if they were accused of sexual harassment or rape. Well, rape is a serious crime. It should be in the courts. It shouldn't be handled by universities, and Betsy DeVos rolled that back. Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General of the Justice Department, is backing the defense of a Colorado baker who has not refused to serve gay people, but as a Christian finds that he cannot, in good conscience, cater gay weddings. He doesn't believe in this, and they're prosecuting him for this. And it's heartbreaking. They're comparing him to the Nazis when his father fought the Nazis. It is breaking his heart. Now here's the thing. In all of these cases, including the cases of black people complaining about the police, you know, I have sympathy for this. I have sympathy for gay people. I want them to live happy lives. I don't really feel that it's my job to go and preach to them or preach against them. I think they can, I hope they pray to God. Each one of them prays to God and finds his way forward on his own. It's not for me to, it's really not for me to pass judgment. Their freedom should not impinge on this man's freedom, right? It shouldn't impinge on the Colorado baker's freedom. There's a video that's going viral. I don't have time to play it now, but there's a video going viral of a black man stopped by a black cop who draws his gun on the guy because he's stopping him for not turning on his turn signal. And the guy in the car is like, you point a gun at me because I didn't turn on my turn signal? I have sympathy for that. That shouldn't happen. But I also have sympathy for this cop who wants to go home. This is not a question of hate versus, goodness. It's a question of a difficult situation, and we want everybody to come out of it the best way we possibly can. It is this empire of lies that threatens our liberty more than any other thing. And at the center of this lie is the lie that we can live in a utopia. This is always the lie of systems, whether it's Islamism, whether it is communism, or whether it's fascism. It is always the lie that we can live in a perfect world if we only all get together and are forced into being one thing, whether it's one thing in our skin color, whether it's one thing in our ideas, whether it's one thing in how much money we make, whether it's one thing in the God we worship. We are sold this lie that we can live in a perfect world, and anybody who opposes that world is hateful. The truth is the exact opposite. The truth is each one of us is a universe unto itself, a universe in relationship to God, in relationship to the truth. The truth doesn't change for each one of us, but each one of us are in a relationship with the truth, which is sacred. It is sacred from the moment you're conceived, not when you're born. It's sacred from the moment you're conceived, that path that you are to God, that you may follow and you may not follow. Each one of us in order for each one of us to live out that truth and to live out that path, we have to be free. We have to be free. And if we're going to be free, we're going to disagree. It's going to be messy. It's going to be ugly. But it is going to be free, and that value stands above every other. It's always lies that threaten freedom, because it's the truth that makes us free. When you know the truth makes us free. And the truth is, the world is a fallen, difficult, sinful place where people do terrible things, but everyone who leaves everyone else alone, who keeps his hand to himself, deserves to speak and deserves to live his life and to find his way to God. You know, on 9/11, we saw for one moment that we are men and we are women, we are good and we are evil, but if we are going to be free, we are going to have to learn to live in truth and to tell the truth to one another, and to not shut people up when we don't like what they're saying. I'm going to end today. I'm Andrew Klavan. This is the Andrew Klavan Show. Tomorrow, I think we have my friend Paul Besson is going to talk about his new book on boxing, which is just terrific. And it's really a book, in a lot of ways, about manhood. So we're going to be talking about that. They are holding the memorial to the 9/11 victims. The president and his wife were out there today for the moment of silence. We'll end with that, and I'll see you again tomorrow.
Oh.